Salutations, Pokemon Premier League fans. It's me, the Trojan Horsey, joined by
Chaos in the Sky.
Chaos in the Sky, indeed. And we are bringing you the weekly recap for Week 2, Season 2 of the Division 1. It was a little bit of a mouthful. Didn't really quite get the whole edge to that there. But like I say, I'm joined by Chaos in the Sky, and we're just going to be sort of running through what's been happening across your Week 2, just to make sure all you guys are up to date and everything. So buckle up and get ready for the details. Yeah, we've got notes and everything, but yeah, we'll just see how the end result actually goes.
Troy's gonna do way better than me. Spoiler alert.
Stop it! You're making me blush. Right. Okay. So I'm going to start this off, and we're actually going to talk about Ethan and the Miami Rotom Heat against NecroStevo of the Eternity Enders, which is the biggest win actually of this week. Spoiler alert. Sorry about that, guys. And we're looking at a 4-0 here. And looking at their initial matchup, NecroStevo definitely seemed to be on the back foot. He didn't have a very good steel switch in. And when you've got like a Mega Aggron on the other side of the field, you cannot forget that thing can hit hard. It's got, I think, a base 140. Which I think Chaos chucked that stat at me earlier.
Yes, 140 attack with 230 defense. Whew.
Yeah, it's one hell of a mon. It's definitely nothing to sneeze at offensively. So NecroStevo had no real steel switch in. He also only had like one answer to Clef, and that was Toxicroak. And even then, that needs like a really clean switch into Clefable. And obviously, it does outspeed and it can hit with a gong shot and whatnot. But yeah, I think definitely, even just looking at them straight off, NecroStevo was definitely on the back foot. Ethan definitely had the matchup there. With the better switch-ins, he had very good speed tiers as well, very good control over that. So yeah, as far as the actual match went down, Toxicroak by and large was NecroStevo's win condition. He absolutely needed that to be able to deal with Clef. If he didn't have that, he just couldn't take out Clef. It was impossible. Clef was just going to set up, and Ethan knew that very well. And NecroStevo made a really, really questionable play, switching Toxicroak in on a heavy slam from Mega Aggron. Now, I watched his commentary over the top, and he said that he was expecting a rock move to come from Aggron, and to be honest, looking at his team and seeing that there isn't a really reliable steel switch in, he should really just have expected the heavy slam. So switching into Toxicroak was a really, really questionable play. A real risk as well, considering that Toxicroak really doesn't scratch Aggron too much. I think, let me think, a Drain Punch or, any sort of fighting type really didn't do all too much. I think we did a calc and it was 60%, wasn't it, Chaos?
I calced low kick with a Life Orb max attack Adamant Toxicroak, and it did 75% max. So even with the Choice Band, the Mega Ag would have lived 1, because the Mega Ag was at full health at the time of the switch.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a really, really questionable play, and I honestly think it really did put NecroStevo instantly into a losing position. I think it was very hard for him to come back from that, especially when he had nothing left on his team that could take on Clef, and that was just shown throughout the rest of the match, with Clef just eating up Brave Birds from Braviary, which I believe was a Sky Plate. I didn't actually look at the item for that, or I think I must have just glossed over it, but yeah, from the off, NecroStevo definitely on the back foot, losing out Toxicroak there. Ethan identified the fact that Clefable could just set up and just could annihilate the rest of the team. There was obviously the slight EV issue with Mienshao, because Mienshao Scarf was supposed to outspeed Lopunny, but it didn't, which didn't really cost Ethan too much other than just literally his Mienshao, but then it just gave him a decent switch in to his Clefable to then sweep up and just finish off the rest of the game. And to be honest, there's not really much else we can really say about that. I was just a little bit surprised about that switch into Toxicroak. And listening to NecroStevo's commentary, I just couldn't really justify it. Even a rock type move, you wouldn't really switch in. Rocks were already up on NecroStevo's side of the field, so it wasn't going for rocks. He could have switched in to Toxicroak, but on the rocks coming in, because he used Levani with Magic Coat, and by the way, I love how he's using Levani. Definitely a really good thing for him. But still, like we said before, even a low kick banded does like 60-something%. So yeah, I mean that's the first battle that we've got for you this week. I'm not sure if I missed anything out there, Chaos. Feel free to check anything
I
extra
think
in
you
there.
pretty much got it. He did very well with Levani with the magic coat. That was a very good play, and I would definitely say that what especially costed him the match early on, and the biggest misplay was switching in the Toxicroak, because it just, I don't see any way that it could have been a good play, but, you know, stuff happens.
Yeah, totally agreed. But I think you've got the next match for us, so yeah, take it away, Chaos.
Yes, our next match is going to be RTK of the Portland Timbers against TheDonphanatic of the Norwich Schady. This match was a 2-0 in RTK's favor, and this was one heck of a match. So, just down to the matchup of it, draft to draft, RTK definitely has a much better matchup than Jack does in this situation. With RTK's Mons between Sylveon and Hitmontop and Metagross and everything else that he has with Melodic and Latios and Rotom Heat, he's got a safe switch in for just about every single Mon that Jack can bring offensively. So throughout pretty much the entire battle, RTK had safe switch-ins for Jack's Mons. He brought Dragon Tail on the Melodic, which was very good for stopping Slowbro from setting up and just dealing damage in general. So that was a good choice on his part. And he also, in the match, predicted the Heatran to switch in and hit it with an Earthquake, which Jack thought was a possibility, but didn't think would happen, and it ended up costing Jack his Heatran early on, which was his Sylveon answer. So very unfortunate for Jack. Jack did have some good plays, though. With the he had Protect on the Heatran. He was able to scout that the Melodic had Toxic, so he knew not to leave his Slowbro in on the Melodic, because you do not want that thing Toxic. Slowbro's best thing is its longevity, and losing that to Toxic would just be crippling for it. Definitely the biggest thing that happened in this match is I believe it was 6-2 or 5-2, something like that, in RTK's favor. And it was the Latios against the Slowbro, and RTK was worried that Shadow Ball would not kill. The Slowbro was a little below half. He was worried that after the Calm Mind, he hit and did a little over half with Shadow Ball. The Slowbro was at +1, then it went for Calm Mind, got to +2. RTK was worried that the Shadow Ball wouldn't kill after getting to +2, but he knew Draco would. So he went for the Draco Meteor, and it missed the Slowbro, and it got a slack off and healed up. And it ended up going from RTK being at like 5 or 6 to Jack's 1 or 2 to bringing him down his Latios. He had to sack his Latios to get a clean switch into his Melodic. Then he had to Toxic the Slowbro, and then he basically just had to sack Mon after Mon, because the Slowbro was at like +5 by that point, since he had to sack the Latios. So he just constantly sacked Mon after Mon, and it brought it down to a 2-0 instead of the 5 or 6-0 it would have been for him to be able to Toxic stall out the Slowbro. But RTK definitely played very well, considering the pivotal Draco miss. He didn't let it definitely upset him, of course, but he didn't let that stop him. He kept his head in the game, and he managed to get the win, despite it not being as good as it could have been for him.
I've certainly seen like some, you know, really interesting comebacks, actually, now that I come to think about it. If you think about Shroom last week, coming back from that, 4-0 that it was going to be?
Yes, he would have gotten 4-0'd if not for a Stone Miss, and then this week Jack would have been like 6 or 5-0'd if not for a Draco Miss. Yeah,
it's absolutely astounding that we've had like these kind of results coming in like 2 weeks in a row. But no, I absolutely agree. I think the way RTK played around that Draco Miss, which was big, definitely big, but the way he played around it was very, very good. I think he realized that
he didn't let it put him in the back. He kept playing and managed to get the win still.
Yeah, absolutely. And your ability under that kind of pressure to produce results is definitely admirable. Certainly figuring out the exact course of action to lead to the win and to be able to take down this massive threat, you know, this +5 Slowbro on the other side of the field. I mean, it's definitely extraordinarily well played. And it's actually going down as our match of the week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is going to be our choice for match of the week, because all the matches were good, but this one especially, just the Draco miss and then bringing it from such a heavy loss to such a close match. Definitely think that would be the match of the week, in my opinion.
Yeah, but you guys may well disagree with the next few matches like coming across, and that is not to say that all the matches are not good either. But I think we'll move on if you're all right with that, Chaos.
Yes,
and,
I'm good. Move on to the next match.
And we shall go on to Shroom versus Evelyn. So we have the Parasect Germain versus the Herdy Bremen. And I like looking at both of the drafts. They have really, really nice drafts. Like I like both of them. You have really good offense. They have Infernape on Evelyn's side and Victini on Shroom's side. You know, both very good like physical fire types. They have really good answers to each other. I really like the way that Evelyn's been using Lipard as well. I'm a massive fan of Lipard, and it's definitely been able to put pressure on teams. And like whilst she was unsuccessful last week in her match, like it's still good to see Lipard doing what it can do. But yeah, definitely looking at both of them, they have really good offensive and defensive synergies. They have good like hazard options and all that kind of stuff, you know, removal, prevention, everything. So by matchup alone, very, very even, I would say personally. You guys may disagree. If you do disagree with anything that we're saying, do leave that in the comments section. It's always good to hear from you about those kind of things. But when it actually came to team preview, Shroom identified very, very early that setting up with Tyrantrum would be very, very good for him. He was carrying the Rock Polish with the Tyrantrum, and his prep to have a Lumberry on there as well was really, really strong. So he knew that once he had worn down Evelyn's team, that Tyrantrum could just come in, and if he was able to get a Rock Polish up, could just sweep the rest of the team. He made some relatively ballsy plays. He left in his Sound Slash on Free Alligator just to get off an Earthquake to make sure that Free Alligator couldn't live like another hit on a potential like Dragon Dance. You know, when you see Victini as well, Victini really didn't do much this week. He was kind of packing it, I think, a little bit bulky with 2 status moves being Toxic and Thunder Wave, more probably for the kind of speed control, realizing early that Tyrantrum was definitely, you know, something that could do a lot of work. And, you know, he noticed that, he saw that come in, and literally Tyrantrum just screwed everything. Like it just
bodied everything in its path.
It literally did. Evelyn really didn't have a switch in to Tyrantrum. There wasn't anything on there. I think what she was trying to do, again, like using the Lipard like very effectively, was to obviously like paralyze it, things like that. And I think she made a play where she didn't go for the Thunder Wave on the Tyrantrum, but instead you turned out, obviously anticipating Shroom to switch out. But I think that was good prep on Shroom's part to obviously have the Lumberry in the first place, to then, you know, bait that U-turn. And I think that's one of the pivotal points in the match, because I'm fairly sure Focus Slash wasn't intact at that point on the Lipard, but no, definitely, like both preparations were absolutely fantastic. But Shroom definitely realized his win condition very, very early and capitalized on it at the end there, giving Tyrantrum a really, really good, tasty number of KOs at the end of this week. But yeah, anything to add to that, Chaos, at all?
No, I think you pretty much said it all. Shroom knew that Tyrantrum was what he needed to win. He made sure damage was on things that could take Tyrantrum, and then Tyrantrum just went to town when he needed to.
Yeah.
Shroom played very well. He used Tyrantrum to just about the best that it could be used, bringing Rock Polish specifically to make sure he could outspeed everything over Dragon Dance. Very well played.
Yeah, it was absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. But yeah, with that, I mean, you know, we've covered that match very, very nicely. And moving on to the next match, and Chaos.
Next we have Keyno and I believe his team name is FC Evington, something like that. And then
Evington, yeah.
Evington, my bad. Against Slyroh of the Pittsburgh Pyroars. I'm American, so I can say Pittsburgh Pyroars correctly. I just can't do Evington. This match was another match where the draft matchup had a big play in it. Slyroh was incredibly on the back foot. He didn't really... Sly does not have what is necessary to punch through Keyno's team when you bring it down to the bare basics of it. And Sly knew this. He had actually talked to me while he was planning for his match and said that he was fairly certain he was going to lose. He was just going to try and get the best differential he could. And I came to pretty much the same conclusion looking at their two teams. Keyno definitely had it in terms of matchup here. Sly's strategy was to bring dual screens Musharna so that his Mons could take on Keyno's and hopefully get enough damage off, and to play hyper offensive, which is what he attempted to do. And it kind of worked out for him at times, other times it didn't. He lost the Musharna fairly early on to the banded Azu. He knew that he could live a play rough, and he was trying to get a reflect up, but he could not live a knockoff, and he neglected to, he took the risk of staying in, hoping for a play rough instead of a knockoff, which I personally think was a misplay on his part, because screens were a big part of his strategy, and he definitely would want to keep those for later. I would have tried to preserve the Musharna and lost something else in exchange, but that's not what happened. He lost the Musharna, and that was definitely when the battle started to take the turn for the worst for Sly, I think, because he was taking hits left and right when he had the screens up, because he did get them up fairly early. He just couldn't get them up the second time. And without the screens, Keyno just started to pretty much punch through his team slowly but surely. Sly also brought Agility Lantern, which was a pretty good idea in my opinion. If he had gotten more chip damage off on stuff, it could have done a lot, but unfortunately he just wasn't able to get that chip damage. So even though he did manage to get the agility up and get some damage on both the Latias and the Swampert, it wasn't enough to bring him back from the incoming loss. Keyno definitely had, like I said, he had it won in terms of matchup, and I would definitely say that I'm not sure if he played better. They both played, other than the leaving Musharna in on Azu, I'd say they both played very well. But Inte specifically and Azumarill, with the immense offensive presence that they give, were the two MVPs for Keyno this week. Inte got 3 kills, I believe, just, using Sacred Fire, Bulldoze, etc. to just take stuff out whenever it was in his way. And then Azu with knockoff and play rough was just doing tons of damage. I believe at one point Sly switched his Scizor in on the Azu's play rough, expecting that to be the move it went for, and it did go for the play rough, but it still did just over half because it was a banded Azumarill, just to show the raw power of an Azumarill. It is ridiculous. So it ended up, unfortunately for Sly, being a 3-0 in Keyno's favor. They both played fairly well. There was a misplay here and there, but overall I would say they both did very well, and it was a very good match.
Yeah, one of those things, having Entei on my squad, most of the time, if you've got a bulky water, something like Lantern, you most of the time would be led towards doing it on a physically defensive kind of side. It takes on Entei kind of well. I don't know. I'm not all that familiar with Sly's team, to be honest with you. But certainly, Azumarill, massive threat. Entei, massive threat. And by the sounds of it, definitely Keyno was putting on pressure where it needed to be. Yeah, it does sound a bit dubious leaving in a Musharna on a banded Azumarill.
Yes, it was, especially because he hadn't even... I thought at first that he had speed crept the Musharna to outspeed the Azu, but that was not the case because the Azu outsped. So, also Sly did not have with his Lantern not being defensive, he didn't really have, and he didn't bring his Typhlosion either, which was a little surprising to me. He did not have, without his screens up, he didn't really have an Entei switch-in, which I feel was another mistake on his part. His main Entei switch-in was a Dragelgi, specifically when it was behind screens, and Dragelgi still did not appreciate Sacred Fire or Bulldoze. So
no, not at all. I mean, Entei is really nothing to sneeze at, and most of the time you will need something to switch in on Entei, because if it's banded or you're looking at Muscle Band, Life Orb, anything like that, less Life Orb because I'm not sure how many people really use that, but you do need something. You need something to be able to switch in on that and force it out again, and most of the time you need to be capitalizing on rocks as well. So yeah, I mean, but definitely, the matchup was in Keyno's favor, but I still think it was a good match.
It was a good match. I agree.
And I really don't think there's been a bad match this week at all, to be honest. Which leads us on to the next match, which is the Nidoqueen's Park Rangers against the Kelta Dino or the Celta Dino. There's a lot
Dano,
of
I think.
Either or. Yeah. Looking at their teams, this is Rye versus Alex or OnesieBanette. And the matchup is actually fairly decent. It's a fairly even matchup, I think. Rye's only problem, and it's something that he's admitted on a regular occasion, is that Mew and Tenta are his only really decent switch-ins to anything. They're the defensive staples on his team. So he's been saying about wanting to bring, a really quirky Mew set, like I tried to run last season with it. But
define quirky.
Utility AV. But yeah, so he's bringing like Mew and Tento as like his defensive switch-ins, and that's just kind of a standard run of his team. Mamoswine is one of the things that really runs through teams. Like, it's surprising just how much work a Mamoswine can do to most drafts, actually.
Yes,
so for him to pick that up is really, really strong. And then obviously looking at Alex's team is like really, really interesting to me. He's got things like Ditto, obviously like Mega Altaria, and like Staraptor as well. And Staraptor against most teams looks like it's going to be doing a lot of work in D1. So watch out for that, definitely as the season goes on. But yeah, like I say, it's very, very even matchup, certainly from my perspective. But in terms of like the preparation and how the match actually went down, the preparation was very, very good. Very, very good from both teams. Alex actually bought the Ditto, which is Scarfed, which is, top marks for Alex. It's one of those things that put a lot of pressure on Rai, sort of from about the midway point to the end. And it's one of the things that really kind of cost him the match, to be honest. And the way that Alex was playing was just top notch. I mean, the switches he was making were very good. The only switch that was potentially questionable is switching into Altaria on the Darmanitan. It was a very good prediction from Rai to go for the Zen Headbutt, predicting the Hariyama, but that did mean that he could then take out the Altaria. And Darmanitan was just doing a hell of a lot of damage to just everything. I mean, Darm is incredible, but Alex just played very, very well. His prediction game was on point. The way he used Ditto to put pressure on Rai to go for certain moves, when he brought it in on the Ice Shard from Rai's Mamo to then transform into Mamo, just the way he was playing it just really had me on the edge of my seat. I was very entertained by it. He just did absolutely fantastically. And one of the other notes for the match is the way that Alex preserved Sturdy on Skarmory. It's one of those things, he could use it late game to just get a really nice differential at the end of it. He came out with the 2-0 rather than the 1-0, just literally by maintaining that Sturdy to survive a Flare Blitz from Darm at the end there, which was really, really good. Fantastic play on his part. I really think Alex played out of his skin this week. There were a couple of really good plays that Rai obviously made by going for that Zen Headbutt against the Altaria, but other than that, Alex just really, really played very, very well. And I don't really have all that much left to add to that. Anything you've got on it, Chaos?
No, you've pretty much covered everything. It was a very good match. I would definitely put it as one of the best matches of the week, possibly right behind RTK and Jack's match myself. Yeah,
agreed.
So now we're going to move on to the last one. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I was merely agreeing with you that that's definitely one of the better matches of this week.
We are so good at transitions. Anyways, the last match of the week that we have is Schady versus Colton, which is the Bayern Munich versus the Osaka Eevees. This match was another one that was fairly even. They both have really good teams. I know in power rankings and whatnot that they were both roughly before the weeks began, they were both fairly high. People think highly of their drafts, as do I. They both have very good drafts. And neither of them really has a one-up on the other. But when it came down to it, the Bayern Munich ended up outplaying Colton and getting the 3-0. I believe it was the 3-0, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes, it was a 3-0.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. All right, just making sure I'm not saying stuff wrong. One of the MVPs of the match was Shaman for Schady, which I believe he brought a defensive set to take on Crocodile, and it took on Crocodile. Let me tell you, it put in so much work. It pretty much anytime Croc was in, it came in, and it got off plenty of chip damage with EQ. I believe it ended up getting 3 KOs. I know it took down the Zebstrika in what was a very bad play by Colton. He brought the Sap Sipper physical one. Early in the match, he revealed Wild Charge, which showed that it was a physical Zebstrika. And so Schady immediately connected the dots and was like, well, that's definitely Sap Sipper then for my Shaman specifically. When Schady had his Shaman in and he knew that Colton was going to switch, went straight for the Earth Power, bam, gone is the Zebstrika early game, which was very unfortunate for Colton, seeing as Zebstrika could have put in a fair amount of work for him with Mega Aerodactyl and other such things. It was just a really... it was a good prediction on Shady's part and a bit of a bad play on Colton's part to just assume that he would go for the Seed Flare when Shady knew that he had his Zebstrika in the back. Overall, I would say Shady played better than Colton. He got some better predictions. Colton did fairly well, though. It was a good match. It wasn't one-sided. He brought Assault Vest Arcanine to deal with the Kyurem, in which it did very well in doing. It was able to take down the Kyurem, I believe, and it overall did well, but it wasn't enough to save him from the wrath of the Bayern Munich.
I mean, Shady is one of those people, when you play against him, he's very almost like surgical in like what he knows he needs to do. Like he can get inside your head, and you can only really beat him with pseudo rain, I've heard.
Yeah,
but
that's about the only way.
That was pure myth, though. Happened in some kind of fairy tale somewhere away. But I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, Shady is just a good player.
Shady is a very good player.
This was a good match, definitely a good match. They've been like relatively close matches, I would say, with the exception of the match with Ethan against NecroStevo. Just
if I'm not mistaken, there have only been 2 matches in the entire season so far that have been more than a 3-0, which was Kelta Dano against the Herdier Bremen last week, and then the Miami Rotom Heat against the Eternicity Enders this week.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's literally just telling you the kind of the kind of drafts that are being drafted. You know, there's not like that much of a disparity in terms of class, and also the class of battlers as well. It's really showing like how good these battlers are in the league, and it's just really impressive, to be honest. The highest sort of scoring difference is 4 KOs, so no, that's it's really good. Like I say, and that's like all of the matches pretty much summed up for you, hopefully.
Yes. So now we're going to move on to the MVP races.
Yes, indeed. So at your like 5th place in the MVP race, we have Clefable. Now, Clefable, after this performance this week and this week alone, I'm fairly sure, it just takes it straight into 5th place with a nice, decent 4 KOs. I said as much as I could possibly say about Clefable in the actual recap of the match, but the way that Ethan used Clefable and the way he prepared it was just spot on. It's a really good mon. A lot of people rate it. I rate it. You know, it is. It's definitely one of the best, if not the best, fairy in the format, with the exception of probably Mega Gardevoir, but for different reasons. So Clefable with that 4 KOs, giving it a nice 4 differential, just sitting it quite nicely in the 5th spot, and breaching the top 5 for the first time this season. And I can see, if depending on the way that Ethan actually uses it in the coming weeks, it's staying relatively high and at least in the top 10. But we'll just see how the season pans out there.
For the 4th place in the MVP race, we have Scyther from Parasect Germain. Scyther is here mainly because in week 1, it managed to get a 4-mon sweep, I believe, at the end of its match, where it skillfully dodged a Stone Edge from a Scarfed Donphan and then proceeded to KO every one of Slyroh's remaining mons. It was a beauty to behold to see Scyther come out and dodge a bunch of rocks and then proceed to cut down everything in its path. It was really unfortunate that Sly lost out on his win with that, but to see that Scyther sweep, I was so pleased to see it go down, in all honesty. It was It was very impressive.
Was stunning.
Yes.
Yeah, it was absolutely stunning.
Yes, so that puts Scyther at a 4 kills and 0 deaths, which, if it weren't for the alphabet, it would be in 3rd, but it is, for now, in 4th.
Absolutely. And moving on to like another kind of tying in terms of alphabet, we have Nidoking as your 3rd place in the MVP race. And Nidoking didn't feature this week for the Kelta Dino, or Celta Dino, or Kelta Dano?
The team that Alex coaches.
the one that Onesie has. So even without featuring this week, Nidoking is still sitting up there very nicely in 3rd, again because of the alphabet, with a 4 differential being 4 and 0. Now Nidoking is just a pure powerhouse. It's got access to Sheer Force. Sheer Force Life Orb is just incredible. It's got relatively good speed tier. and just the most fantastic coverage. And it's one of those things that would be doing great for him for the rest of the season. I can't see him dropping it for anything, to be honest. If you have Nidoking or Nidoqueen, you keep hold of them because they are utterly fantastic mons. And I can definitely see Nidoking staying in the top kind of half, at least sort of top 10, top 15, because literally the offensive presence that it brings to any team is just spot on, and it's definitely deserving third place in the MVP.
I agree. Moving on to number 2, we have Tyrantrum, which we've already talked about a little bit earlier in the recap. Tyrantrum this week, I believe he was only brought this week. He wasn't brought in week 1, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I don't believe it was.
And he just ran house on Evelyn, killing 5 of her 6 mons. It head smashed and dragon clawed its way to victory. It got the last 3 mons swept up once it got its rock polish up. And this, with a base 121, I believe, attack stat and access to a head smash that does not deal recoil damage, as well as the elemental fangs and the ever-prevalent stab dragon moves, it's just is no surprise that Tyrantrum is this high up on the list. He's 5 kills with 0 deaths, so a +5 differential. He's right behind first place, and I would not be surprised that so long as Shroom continues to use it cleverly, that Tyrantrum would be in the top 10 for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And moving on to your first place here, and it's very, very unsurprising, definitely as someone who's studied League format for this amount of time, that Darmanitan is the top of the MVP race. Now, a physical fire type, not necessarily physical, but an offensive fire type with a good speed tier will always do well in a League format. You've got things like Victini, you have things like Infernape, Entei, Darm. They are all things that do very, very well in League format. They are things that threaten teams, and especially this season, despite the fact that Rai is still yet to win a match, it's sitting a very, very tasty 8 KOs to 2 deaths. Now, Darm is just absolutely brilliant. You can gain momentum. It's got things like U-turn. Its main thing is Flare Blitz. Sheer Force boosted Flare Blitz is obscene. It's just like a step down from a V-Create from Victini. It's definitely nothing to sneeze at. Yeah, exactly. So it's an absolutely stunning mon, and it's really no surprise to me at all that it's sitting up at the top. It's got a +6 differential. I can definitely see it staying in the top 10. Wouldn't be surprised to call it and say it's going to stay in the top 5. If Rai does the same kind of thing as he did last season with Excadrill, kind of getting it, as high up in the MVP race as it was, then he'll be bringing Darm most weeks, to be honest, unless there is a really prevalent counter team in his opponent's squad. But it's
very rare. Very rare to run into a team that has a prevalent Darmanitan counter.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
12th place with 0 points and a -6 differential, we have the Herdier Bremen, coached by Evelyn. In 11th place, we have the Pittsburgh Pyroar with 0 points again and a -4 differential. Now we will be moving on to the league table placement for this week in the PPL. So the Osaka Eevee is ahead of the Pittsburgh Pyroar just by alphabet alone. After that, we have the Norwich Schady, which is 0 points and -3 differential, followed by the Nidoqueen Park Rangers, which is also 0 points and -3 differential, once again coming down to the alphabet deciding who is in 8th and who is in 9th. After that, we have the Eterna City Enders, which are in 3rd place with in 7th place with 3 points and a -3 differential. Then we have the FC Eviton with 3 points and a surprisingly 0 differential. They got beat 3-0 and then they won 3-0, so they are at 0 in differential. Then we have the Portland Timbers, which are at +6 with 6 points with a +3 differential. Then the Parasect Germain, which are tied with them, also with 6 points and a 3-point differential. Again, the alphabet comes into play, as it tends to do. Then we have the Miami Rotom Heat with a 6 points as well, but with a 5-point differential. Then we have the Keltadeno and Bayern Munich, which are both at 6 points with a 6 differential, again coming down to the alphabet deciding who is first and who is second.
So with that kind of rundown, I guess we'll move on to the fixture list, at least for next week. And one of the first matches that we've got going up is Miami Rotom Heat against Keltadeno, which is going to be a really, really strong match. Both have come away with the wins there. And as you can see from the league table, they're both sitting really high up there. So this could be a really defining factor in how the rest of the season goes for these two teams. So I'm personally really looking forward to it. Next one, we have the Eternal City Enders against the Portland Timbers. They've had a bit of a mixed start, both of them. I mean, the Portland Timbers have done relatively well, coming out with that +3. But I really think that would be a good match to check out. So again, make sure you're watching. Nitter Queen's Park Rangers against the Parasect Germain. Now, Shroom has been on a really nice set of form. He's really been able to pull out these like late game sweeps recently. So it'd be interesting to see how Rye handles that, having come from 2 losses going into the 3rd week. Next up, we have what is Norwich Skitty? That's it. I'm sitting there looking at it, just like, please come to me. We have Norwich Skitty against Bayern Munich. So we have Schady, who's done very, very well at the start of this season, against Jack, who has probably had a bit of bad luck, to be honest. I mean, he got given a bit of a lifeline with the Draco miss against the Portland Timbers. But certainly his match against the Eternal City Enders in the 1st week, he won't be wanting to replicate. The next match is the Hertha Bremen against FC Eviton. Both very, very solid teams. Hertha Bremen yet to get a win, so we'll see how that pans out, as Keyno has been playing like really, really well. So yeah, again, really good matchup, I think. And the that is the Osaka EVs. I'm not imagining that, am I? The
Osaka EVs against the Pittsburgh Pyroars is the last match for next week.
Yeah, that's the last match. I'm sorry, it's getting to that time. I was like, I'm not used to long recordings. This is a very strange thing for me. But,
I understand completely, but I believe neither of them have won yet this season, so it's definitely going to be a very big match for the both of them, either continuing their losing streak or finally getting over their losing streak and hopefully starting to build up momentum in the season as it continues on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in before it's a draw, right?
That would be very impressive.
Yeah, but yeah, we've got some really, really good matches up there. Definitely, we're going to see teams that are going to be continuing a win streak and teams that could be continuing a losing streak. So make sure you're watching all of those matches, or at least if you're not watching them, then just keep up to date with the weekly recap. We'll just be running through everything in a fairly condensed form, just for your viewing pleasure, pretty much. But I believe is this the time? Is this the time we start wrapping it up?
This is the time to outro. We're at the end.
Okay, this is the time to outro it. So all of the links, I believe, for all of the coaches will be in the description below. So make sure you go and check all of them out on their YouTube channels, as well as their Twitter accounts, and following them. And make sure you're following us at the Pokemon Premier League on Twitter. That link, again, will be down in the description. And if you're not yet subscribed, and I'm not sure why you wouldn't be yet, but do make sure you're doing that as well. We are producing more and more content on this channel for this season, including weekly recaps and power rankings as well, with a couple of other bits and bobs that we have in the works as well. So make sure you're all up to date with all of that, and make sure you are up to date with Mining Chaos's stuff in the PPL, because we are in D2 and there's some cool stuff happening there. So I hope you're watching out for that as well.
Don't pay attention to my first 2 weeks. Just go watch Troy. Come back when it's my week 3 match.
Oh, but oh, I choked. Oh, that was terrible.
That's how I'm going to beat him week 11.
Anyway, yeah, so that was us. That was me and Chaos giving you your weekly recap. Stay tuned next week when we got week 3 and we've got some great matches coming for you. But yeah, see you later, guys.
Farewell.